Sup, bros and broskies? My name is Crantius, and Led Zeppelin was formed in the summer of 1968 when a band known as the Yardbirds broke up. The problem is, this band still had some shows booked in Scandinavia, so guitarist Jimmy Page and bassist Chris Dreja performed under the Yardbirds' name. They originally asked singer Terry Reid to be the lead singer, but he turned it down and recommended a friend of his, a singer by the name of Robert Plant. When Page went to hear him sing, he instantly knew it was the sound he was looking for. Next, they had to find a drummer. Luckily, Robert Plant knew just the man for the job, someone who he had previously played with, John Bonham. Then, when Chris Dreja dropped out of the band to become a photographer, bassist John Paul Jones picked up his position. So, there it is, the famous lineup that would create some of the most influential and groundbreaking rock music of their time. They would later rename themselves to Led Zeppelin. Now, picture this for a moment. It's the 12th of January, 1969. After a long weekend of partying with your friends to music like Hey Jude by the Beatles and Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel, you're probably gonna be sick and tired of that pop sound by now. But don't worry, cause your buddy Bobby apparently just bought some new album that just released today, and it is a bit more your style. You see, Bobby knows that you tend to prefer the music from harder rock bands coming from the UK. Bands like The Doors and The Who. So he made sure to get something a bit more loud. So you two go straight back to Bobby's house from the record store. You both head to his room, eager to listen to this new band. Bobby takes out the album, and you both know you're in for a good time when you see a picture of the fucking Hindenburg crashing and burning. Your friend gently unsheaths this new record and places it on the turntable before putting that sweet needle down. There's silence for a bit, when suddenly... Good times, bad times. What is there to be said about it that hasn't already been said? It's a fantastic opener to an album, and let alone an entire discography. Zeppelin set out with this album to make a good and accurate first impression of their sound. And by God did it work. Now, a quick little tangent here about the song. The guitar solo within this song was actually made by using a speaker, apparently, known as a Leslie speaker. This speaker had some sort of a moving part within it that created a swirling sound, so that's why it sounds like that, I think. I don't know. I'm not an audio technician, but that's what it says here in my script, so yeah. The next song, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, is actually a cover. The song originally was written by Anne Breeden sometime in the late 50s. She at one point would perform it live on a radio station in Berkeley, California. The song would be heard by a woman known as Janet Smith, who would then teach it to Joan Baez. And it's Miss Baez's version you're hearing right now, as that was the first recorded version of the song, and also the one which guitarist Jimmy Page first heard. Okay, so you got that? It was written by Breeden, heard by Smith, who taught it to Baez for her 1962 album, only to then finally get to Page and finally be recorded by Led Zeppelin in 1968 for their 1969 debut album. Obviously, Zeppelin decided to put their unique spin on what was supposed to be a classical folk song. It begins in a similar way with an acoustic guitar picking and Robert Plant's soothing vocals, only to then erupt into an all-out rock ballad. The song after that, You Shook Me, is also a cover, this time written by blues artists Willie Dixon and Earl Hooker, to be recorded by famous Chicago blues player Muddy Waters. Zeppelin took this song and actually slowed it down. While on the surface this may seem kind of counterproductive, it actually serves to give the track a more psychedelic and uneasy feeling. Something that they would experiment more with later on in their career with songs like When the Levee Breaks and Kashmir. The next song on the album is Dazed and Confused, which is, once again, a cover. But there's a bit of a problem with this one as opposed to the last couple of covers. You see now, Led Zeppelin kind of looked at the legal rights of the person who originally made it, Jake Holmes, and just kind of went,
no offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
So, yeah, there would end up being a lawsuit later on in 2010, which would end up being settled out of court. But the main thing to take away from the actual song is that Led Zeppelin changed the emphasis on the drums to help better fit their style. And the changing of the lyrics by Robert Plant made it give a more bluesy vibe. The B-side of this album starts with what I think is one of the most underrated Zeppelin songs, Your Time Is Gonna Come. This song is wholly original and starts with bassist John Paul Jones on the organ and then builds up to a more grand, climactic feel within the rest of the album. It then transitions into another song with experimental instrumentation called Black Mountain Side. It was loosely inspired by a Burt Jansch song called Black Water Side. Zeppelin's version, however, has no words though, unlike the original. The song following this is Communication Breakdown. This song returns to the louder sound heard earlier in the album, but is also considered one of Zeppelin's more classic rock songs. This sound would later be expanded on in songs like the iconic Immigrant Song.
Anybody know who this is?
Next is yet another cover written by Willie Dixon, this song being I Can't Quit You Baby. And just like with You Shook Me, Zeppelin decided to slow the song down, this time giving it a more jazzy and live bluesy feeling. Lastly is the closing song, How Many More Times. This song was commonly used by the band in their shows as the closing number, and since this album aims to be an accurate recreation of their live shows, it only makes sense to finish the album with this 8-minute jam. The song was mostly written during a jam session the band had that started with the Howling Wolf song, How Many More Years. It was continuously changed with each performance they had until it ended up as its own unique song. Overall, while Led Zeppelin I doesn't necessarily show off the band's writing chops, it does give a great taste of their American blues-inspired sound and acts as a sign of what was to come for the band.